Father God, thank you so much for getting us to this point of the week. And God, we thank you every week that you bring us this far, but God, we don't take it for granted. We can't take it for granted. And we thank you for your favor, your grace, in allowing us to gather together and get into your word. And God, I ask that tonight you would that through your word and by your spirit, you would give us what we need. Give us what we need tonight as we continue to learn of you through your word. We love you and bless you in Jesus' name. Amen. We're still in our series called Witnesses. We're going to get all the way to the end of the book of Acts. In the last couple of weeks, we have tarried like one chapter at a time. And so we skipped ahead a little bit tonight, but God directed me to where our pit stop would be tonight. And we're going to be in Acts chapter 25. Last week we were in what was it? Acts 9, was it 19? I think it was Acts 19. And then our message from Sunday was also from Acts 19. Please go back and watch those if you missed them, or watch them again. And so now we're jumping ahead. If you were with us on Sunday, then you heard about what Paul ended up doing. Paul knew he was going to face some difficulties, and but he committed himself to some things. He was resolved in his spirit to do some certain things. And we heard a little bit about how he did it. Tonight, we're going to get a little bit more. We're going to dig more into one part of his journey to getting to Rome, like he said he was going to do. So we're going to be in Acts chapter 25. We're just going to walk through this text, and I want to teach a little bit, give some context of some things that happened before chapter 25, and then we'll get into it. Acts chapter 25, verses 1 through 12. And again, I'm in the ESV, starting at verse 1. Now, 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea. And the chief priests and the principal men of the Jews laid out their case against Paul. And they urged Festus, asking as a favor against Paul that he summon him to Jerusalem, because they were planning an ambush to kill him on the way. Festus replied that Paul was being kept at Caesarea and that he himself intended to go there shortly. So he said, "Let the men of authority among you go down with me, and if there is anything wrong about that man, let them bring charges against him." After he stayed among them not more than 8 or 10 days, he went down to Caesarea, and the next day he took his seat on the tribunal and ordered that Paul be brought. When he had arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many and serious charges against him that they could not prove. Paul argued in his defense, "Neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I committed any offense." But Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, "Do you wish to go up to Jerusalem and there be tried on these charges before me?" But Paul said, "I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. To the Jews, I have done no wrong, as you yourself know very well. If then I am a wrongdoer and have committed anything for which I deserve to die, I do not seek to escape death. But if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar." Then Festus, when he had conferred with his council, answered, "To Caesar you have appealed, to Caesar you shall go." So to give us a title for this evening, for our study, we are talking about, our title tonight is "You Tried It." You tried it. So we talked about on Sunday, we talked about in chapter 19, I just want to read this verse real quick. Verse 21. Now, after these events, Paul resolved in the spirit to pass through Macedonia and Achaia and go to Jerusalem, saying, after I have been there, I must also see Rome. And he went to those other places. He stopped back at the other churches that he had planted, and then he went back home. He went to Jerusalem and ultimately to Antioch, which was his home base. And so when he got close to Jerusalem, some people said, "Hey, I don't think you should go to Jerusalem. It's not a good look. It's some folks who's coming for you." And he's like, "Look, let it be what it's going to be, whatever it's going to be." And he goes. False charges are brought against him, and he was about to be flogged. And he even then said, "Whoa, hold on a minute." To the police officer, "Hold on a minute. I am a citizen of Rome, just like you are, and you know that that a Roman citizen cannot receive a punishment or penalty for a crime without having their day in court and being found guilty." And this was a good police officer who followed the law and did not take matters into his own hands, and was like, "You know what, you're right. You need to go before the court." And he was sent before different Roman officials, and in chapter 23 and in chapter 24, he's sent before a governor named Felix. He goes before Felix, and he pleads his case, and it's the same case, just like Peter. We saw earlier in the book of Acts, Peter had the same sermon, and Paul pleads the same case, not guilty. Whatever they say they did, I didn't do it. I did something, but it's not what they're saying I did. And kind of goes back and forth. But Paul makes it clear in verse 16. And I just want to stop here real quick in verse 16 to make a point on our way down to where we're going. He says in verse 16, chapter 24, verse 16, "So I always," no, let me go back to the beginning of a sentence that doesn't start with the word "so." Verse 14. "But this I confess to you, that according to the way," which is what the church was called at that time, the followers of Jesus, their practice was called the way. "According to the way which they call a sect, I worship the God of our fathers, believing everything laid down by the law and written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men themselves accept, that there will be a resurrection of both the just and the unjust." And then in verse 16, he says, "So I always take pains to have a clear conscience toward both God and man." And I just want to drop in here as a point for us that we ought to keep a clear conscience. I'm gonna come back to that, but I just wanted to like put a pin there, and I'll finish explaining what happens to get us up to chapter 25. So he makes his case, and the governor decides to he puts him in jail. He's like, "Well, I'm gonna put you in jail because the people want you in jail," and we already know how these people can be, and how the Roman officials would respond. We saw that with what happened with Jesus. It was like, I can't find any charges to bring against this man, but what y'all want to do? I'm gonna free somebody. How about that? It's the time for somebody to be freed. Who do you want me to free? We got a convicted murderer here, and we've got Jesus. and they said, give us Barabbas. We know how these people can be. So Felix kept him in jail, but he had knowledge. He knew about these early Christians, and so he wasn't trying to be too harsh, but he also wasn't trying to have an uprising. So he kept Paul in jail, but the way he kept him in jail, and I love this, just want to point this out in verse 23, then he gave orders to the centurion that he should be kept in custody, but have some liberty, that none of his friends should be prevented from attending to his needs. And this isn't a point, but I want to make the point to let all of us know that when we are witnesses, when we are Christ's witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the ends of the earth, even when we are bound, even when we are kept in custody, God will still make sure that all of our needs get met. And the governor here did the same things. Like, I'm gonna keep him in jail, but it's gonna be kind of like a open jail, so folks can come in. He can't go out, but his people can come and make sure that his needs are met. And so he's kept in jail for like 2 years in this, I guess, kind of like he's kept in house arrest for 2 years, and then Felix dies. And then comes in a new governor, and the new governor's name is Festus. And at the beginning of our reading, we find that Festus had only been there 3 days. Now, 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea, and the chief priests and the principal men of the Jews laid their case against Paul and urged him, asking as a favor against Paul that he summon him to Jerusalem. So first of all, we already know Paul didn't do anything wrong. But I want to go back to our first point in terms of keeping a clear conscience. What Paul had been saying in the case that he was making was, I'm a Jew, they are Jews. They're trying to say that I did something against them, but we believe the same thing. We're all looking for a resurrection, and I teach this resurrection. Like that's it. He even said, there's one verse somewhere, I thought I underlined it, can't find it, but he said the only reason any of this is coming up is because of the resurrection, the resurrection of the dead. And I believe Jesus got up, they don't, and that's what all this is really stemming from. I didn't do anything wrong. We need to have a clear conscience before God and before people. I think sometimes we will resolve to ourselves that we've got one or the other. Clear conscience with God, like this between me and God. God, I know we've all said this, God knows my heart. And so between God and I, like, we're good. But amongst other people, I don't know what to tell you, because you just gonna have to, you go talk to God about it, because me and God are good. I've got a clear conscience with God. Or the other way, we'll do whatever we think is necessary to appease the people around us, to appease society, to appease the culture, to appease work standards, our employer, our boss, whomever, but lack integrity with God. And we'll get the approval of man, but not be in good standing with God. In fact, I know what I have done is I will avoid God. But not that I can really actually truly avoid him, but I'll go out of my way to, like, I'm just not gonna pray as much. I think that should work, to just stay away from God. And I'm not going to really read my Bible. Like, I'll look at the Bible, but I'm not going to read it, because he might just jump out and say something to me. But I look good in front of everybody else. What Paul says here in defense of himself is, I go out of my way to keep a clear conscience with God and with people. I'm not doing anything to harm or offend people, and I'm making sure that I stay good with God. And a lot of times I think as Christians, we don't believe there's a way to do both. We don't believe there's a way to do both. We think that we can't meet the needs of people and stay true to God if the things that people say that they want or people say that they need stand in opposition to what we believe God to stand for. And I'm not going to give any examples because I want you to come up with your own of ways that we as Christians might gatekeep morality and put ourselves in bad standing with people, thereby making a bad name with God. Like we can't truly be in good standing and have a clear conscience with God while we are readily harming and offending people. We can't. So we can think that we're in good standing with God, and I've got a clear conscience with God because I prevented you from doing what I don't think God would want you to do. That ain't it. So going on to our next point. So our first point was we got to keep a clear conscience. We have to keep a clear conscience. And then we need to know that some propositions are really just tricks. Now, this isn't something that happens to Paul in this story, but happens to another one of the characters in this story, which is the new governor, Festus. Paul had been on house arrest and had access to his people. All of his needs were met for the last couple years when the governor was Felix. Now that Festus is here, we see in verse 1, it says after 3 days, they come to Festus and he's like, I don't know, it's just my 3rd day here. And they're already trying to get him to make a decision about somebody who's been in custody for 2 years. After he'd been there for 3 days, hey, have him come down to Jerusalem. And it says very clearly in verse 3, because they were planning an ambush to kill him on the way. Now, Festus might not have known this, but I would like for us, because we can't always be the hero in these stories. We got to make sure not to put ourselves in the shoes or the sandals of the hero of the story. Remember, the Bible is a book about God and his relationship toward us. And in this story, we might say that Paul is the human hero, but we cannot always be Paul. Sometimes we're Festus. Sometimes we're in the position where something is brought to us, and we have to make a decision about what is brought to us with the information that we've got. And the proposition that was made to Festus was, hey, we're Jews, bring Paul to Jerusalem. That way we can try him here. We've got matters to resolve. Just have him come to Jerusalem and we'll just take care of it. No biggie. All the while, it was a trick. They were trying to make Festus part of their conspiracy. They, as opposed to allowing Paul to have his day in court, they were going to assassinate the man. They were going to jump out, and on the road to Jerusalem, they were going to have him killed. We need to know that every proposition, as mild as it may seem, that comes toward us, everything that we are faced with in terms of decisions and opportunities, things that are presented to us, they may even look benign, meaning it may look like no harm, no foul. Like, what difference does it make if I choose to do this way? But the reality is that sometimes those opportunities that come before us, sometimes the choices that we are given to make, they have a little something extra included behind the scenes that we don't know about. And the only way for us to know one from the next, to know a good opportunity from a trick, to know a positive proposition from one that's going to get us into some danger or trouble, or might be a ploy altogether to harm someone else and just have us involved, get our name involved in the nonsense that's going on. We have to pray. We have to know. Well, we can't know. We need to petition God. We need to have discernment, ask God for wisdom. Is this, like, what is this? Is this something that I should do? Not everything that looks good is actually good. Not everything that sounds good is actually good. Not everything that sounds right. A lot of stuff can sound right and sound like it makes good sense, or sound like it's godly, or sound like it is helpful. We need wisdom from God. We need God's intervention. And on the flip side of that, what we see happening here with Paul leads us into our next point, which is I just call it protection by proxy. I didn't have any fancy words or fancy sentence that I could put together. Protection by proxy. There are some things that will come against us, some things that others may present, and you've heard me say it before, like, we ain't got no haters. Like, maybe sometimes there's situations where we got some haters, but for the most part, it's just people. And some people are for us, some people are against us, some people are neutral. They think they're neutral, but then they're actually accidentally against us unconsciously. Their unconscious biases just slip out, just like ours do every now and then. And so it feels like folks are personally attacking us. Well, Paul is actually being personally attacked, but whether the attack is personal or it's accidental or unconscious, God offers us, when we are, as witnesses, when we are doing God's bidding, when we are living as witnesses, as living testimonies of Christ and of God's love, we have his protection. I'm sure, well, I know everybody knows the song. If you've been within 50 yards of a church, then you know the song that says, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper. It won't work." It's also a Bible verse. But it's true. No weapon that is formed against us will work. And somebody told me this, that a pastor of mine years ago, when I still lived in San Diego, told me, no, I didn't still live in San Diego, but I was in San Diego, and he invited me into his office, which was a big deal, get invited into the pastor's office. And he reminded me, he said, no, he didn't remind me, he told me, he taught me in this moment that scripture never says that the weapons will not form. No weapon forms against us will prosper. It won't work. God will do what he said he would do. He's the man of his word. But it doesn't mean that the weapons will not be formed. It just says that the weapons that are formed won't prosper. And so we can't panic in the sight of formed or fashioned weapons. We need to know that we're protected. And this protection by proxy just means that God will use whomever he's going to use to accomplish whatever he intends to accomplish. And if our protection is his priority, then he will cause people to move who may not be even trying to move on God's orders, but God will just cause it. Because we know Romans 8:28, that God causes all things to work together for the good of those who love him, the called according to his purpose. So God causes these things to happen. Let's look at what happens in verses 4 and 5. After these people said to the governor on just his third day there, hey, just send him down here and we'll just have our little trial and we'll take care of it. Verse 4, Festus replied that Paul was being kept at Caesarea and that he himself intended to go there shortly. So already plan is foiled. No, 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 no. We want you to bring him. He's in Caesarea. We want you to bring him here to Jerusalem. And Festus says, well, I'm going to Caesarea in a few days. Why call for him to come from there to here? Because I'm already about to go there. Verse 5. So he said, let the men of authority among you go down with me. And if there is anything wrong about the man, let them bring charges against him. Now, I'm pretty sure Festus didn't know this at the time, that he was saving Paul's life. But God will cause things to work out for us. And this is one of those parts right here. Like they tried it, didn't they try it? Like, oh, just bring him over here. Just have it go this way and we'll handle it. And Festus is like, no, how about we just go over there? I'm going that way anyway. Y'all tried it. So it wasn't going to work that way. Wasn't going to happen that way. And then Festus, not realizing, probably not even knowing that he is doing God's work on behalf of God's people. Paul, God's person here is Paul. And we are God's people. And sometimes he will cause people to do things on our behalf, not even knowing it. Like, I think I've shared the example of our home, Jamila and I, the home that we live in, that I would have never even considered looking at. This house was never on the market. We didn't build this house, but it was never on the market. And someone else had this house built, and they had it under contract, and then some things changed in their situation during the pandemic. And so between the time that they had to go ahead and cancel their contract and the time that we signed our contract, it was just a day, because the property was held for us. The salesperson said, oh, this house, the contract might not go through. If you want it, we'll get a contract together, but it can't be signed until after, like, it can't be under contract when you sign a contract. So the house was held for us, which means that I don't know about now, but there's no pictures of the inside of this house. So you go to Zillow and it's just there might be a picture of the front. I don't know. I haven't looked, but there were no pictures of the inside of the house because it was never listed. No one else had an opportunity to purchase this house. God did that. God worked that out and used other people to work it out. And all we had to do was walk in obedience, apply. Now, me, myself personally, I wasn't going to apply. I would not have applied for such a mortgage as this. I would not, because I'm scary. My wife is the person of faith, and between the two of us. Now, I have faith. I've got great faith, just for other people. When it comes to things for me, it's like, I don't know if God's really gonna do all that. Like, I don't know. They tell me God is a conservative, so I think he's gonna run things on the more conservative side, allegedly. But God is liberal in his giving, so he gives, like, what good father would withhold gifts from his children? That's what Jesus said about God towards us. So God will use other people to work things out for us. And that's what happened. Festus was like, nah, I'm not going to have Paul come from Caesarea to Jerusalem. I'm going there. Why don't y'all come there and raise the stakes? Why don't you send your people who have some authority and come on up here with me and just make your case there? Simple enough, right? Paul was protected. Going on, verse 6, he stayed, Festus, the governor, stayed there with them for another 8 to 10 days, it says, and then went down to Caesarea, took a seat at the tribunal, and they came, the people from Jerusalem, they went ahead and came and, sent their best lawyers, sent the prosecutor down, and the other attorneys, the ADAs, to do their little law and order thing. And then it says in verse 7, when he had arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, this is Paul, bringing many and serious charges against him that they could not prove. The weapon was formed, but it had no effect because it was ineffectual. There may be things that come against us, that attempt to come against us, because this is a really sad attempt, honestly. Like, again, y'all tried it, like, seriously, like, you just gonna lie. You're gonna come up with stuff and you can't prove any of these things. They couldn't prove any of the things that they were saying. And the enemy, our enemy, the devil, the accuser of the brethren and sistren, tells stories on us. Can't prove none of it. Can't prove any of it. They're all just lies. And God's not going to believe the lies because God already knows. He'll convince us. We have to be careful not to be convinced of the lies that the devil tells of us to us. We have to be careful not to be convinced of the lies about us the devil tells to us. Because it can't be proven. There are certain things that cannot be proved. Stories that we have made up about ourselves, things that we say about ourselves. I'll tell you one of mine. I've always believed that I had grown to believe about myself that I was lazy. I'm just lazy. When I would see other people getting straight A's, when I would see other people like finishing things like degrees and showing up to class, like, there were some days I couldn't even show up to college classes. I would have to get to school so early to get a parking lot and fall asleep in the car. And it'd be time to walk to class and be like, I'm just going to stay asleep. I'm going to just sleep here in the parking lot until it's time to go to work. I've done that. And there have been times where I was just being lazy, but I had made up about myself that I'm lazy. And it's just some stuff that I can't do. Come to find out, in my 30s, I have ADHD. Like actual ADHD, not the made up version, not a term that just gets used flippantly, like, oh, I don't pay attention, so I have ADHD. No, I actually like diagnosed and treated for ADHD. Come find out, I'm not lazy. My brain works differently, and I don't fit into the same box that we all get forced to like fit into. Here we are, round pegs, and they want to fit us into a square hole. It's not gonna work. Like, I'm not shaped like that. That doesn't make me lazy. I'm just not shaped in the thing that you're trying to force me through. I'm not lazy. I actually excel in a great number of things. But I had allowed myself to be convinced that I was lazy. And there was no proof. Just like here, there was no proof. Verse 8, Paul argued in his defense. He said, neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I committed any offense. And you can say a bunch of stuff, but I have not actually done anything wrong. Sometimes we find ourselves, I know I have felt this way this week with so many different stressors. stressors in my personal life, at work, within my own head, and in our world and society, and beginning to feel like maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem. But Paul said, y'all tried it. I know I'm not the problem. I have not done anything wrong here. I have not done anything wrong here. I have not done anything wrong. I'm not the problem. And so this last, at least written point that I want us to remember is that we need to remember our rights. Remember your rights. Know your rights. Know your rights. If you are being harassed by the police for no apparent reason, for no actual valid reason, know your rights. Here in these United States, in the case of, I believe it was the People v. Miranda, which is where Miranda rights come from. It's the name of the case, if you didn't know that. In Miranda, what was determined is that I have the right to remain silent because I know that anything that I say or do can and probably will be used against me in the court of law. So I don't need to wait until you tell me I have the right to remain silent. I already know I have the right to remain silent. I don't have to say nothing. So where are you headed? I'm not answering any questions. Well, I just want to know what you're doing here. I'm not answering any questions. There's this account that I follow on TikTok called, now the name of it just slipped my mind, maybe because I wasn't supposed to say it. I don't know. They should send me money and then it'll come to my remembrance. But they, capital audits, that's what it's called, I think. And these people, they go and they will go to, like a police station or public building, post office, whatever, and take pictures or start recording, which they know the police are probably gonna come and bother them. And they do it just so that the police will come and so that they can make sure that the police know what the law is. You can't record over here. Why not? Because you're not allowed to. Well, what code is that? I have the right to be here. I'm a journalist. Who do you work for? I'm an independent journalist. Let's see some ID. I don't have it. You got to show ID when I ask you for it. Do you have reasonable, articulable suspicion of me committing a crime? This is how all these videos go. Well, you being suspicious. Is being suspicious a crime? Show me your ID. Am I being detained? Yes. What are you detaining me for? What crime do you believe I've committed? The point is, they know their rights, and people in the comments be like, why? They're just out there making trouble. But the point is, there's a lot of police out there that don't know the law. They're supposed to be upholding it and protecting it, all that stuff. But the person behind the camera knows their rights. And because they know their rights, they're not going to just allow any old thing to happen to them. And they got it all on camera. And some of them make their living by their rights being violated, and then they sue, and then the city has to pay them because they knew their rights. Paul knows his rights right here. He knows he ain't done nothing. Verse 9, but Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, because remember the Jews wanted him to send him to Jerusalem, but he asked Paul, hey, do you want to go to Jerusalem and be tried? And here's what he says, verse 10. I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. I know my rights. Yeah, you're not gonna send me over to Jerusalem. I'm going before Caesar. Because remember, if you remember from our message on Sunday, Paul was determined to go to Rome. He had resolved in his spirit, I'm going to Rome. He even told the Romans, he wrote them a letter and said, if God wills, I'm coming to y'all. I'm not going to no Jerusalem. I know these people. Look, I used to be with them. And I used to approve people being killed. I ain't about to go over there with them. What I look like? Do I look like Boo Boo the Fool? I believe that's in the original language. That might be what it says. They might have taken that out. Some manuscripts in Aramaic said, "Do I look like Boo Boo the Fool?" I'm not going to know Jerusalem. I am going before Caesar. I am a Roman citizen. I know my rights, and I'm going to have my day in court before Caesar. Verse 11, Paul continues on, "If I am a wrongdoer and I've committed anything for which I deserve to die, I don't seek to escape death. Like, if I'm guilty, then if I committed the crime, then I got to do the time. But if this glove does not fit," he goes on to say, "but if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can give me up to them." We have to know our rights. When the accuser accuses us of something, no. I am a witness. I am a witness of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, a man from Galilee. And he came to forgive my sins and to set me free. And I serve a God. So look, if you really got something on me, then let's go ahead and let's handle that. But otherwise, go ahead and get out my way. Y'all tried it, and I feel a little bit preachy because I've had a rough week. But the stuff that comes at us, the weapons that are formed against us, that might make us feel some kind of way, that might put us in position to have to defend ourselves, even though there's nothing really to defend ourselves against. Y'all tried it. I know my rights. You don't really have nothing on me, because if you did, then we wouldn't still be talking. We'd be walking. And I'm not one to talk to the devil. But if he tries it, I'm gonna just, if you had something on me and it was legit and you could prove it, we wouldn't be talking. I would be living in the consequences of what you accused me of. It's this next part right here at the end of verse 11. Because Paul knows his rights, and he knows he ain't done nothing, because he keeps a clear conscience before people and before God. I know I ain't done nothing. If I did something, he evoked a couple thousand years prior to it. He prophesied the words that were quoted by the late and great Whitney Houston. I want to see the receipts. Show me the receipts. Produce the receipts. If there's no receipts, then you can't prove I made the purchase. And here's what he says at the end: "I appeal to Caesar." Now, when I say know your rights, I mean, civically, within the nation, country, city, state where you live, know your rights. But as witnesses, because remember, what's happening to Paul is happening to him because he's a witness. It's all because of the resurrection. He says, "I appeal to Caesar." We're not appealing to Caesar. We're not appealing to the president or the Supreme Court or to Congress, because they on vacation. Everything going on right now, and they on vacation. No lie. Paul said, I appeal to a higher authority. I'm not messing with y'all. I'm not dealing with y'all. I'm not dealing with your accusations. I'm not dealing with what you're trying to say about me. I'm not about to sit here and believe these lies about me that are in my head, just ruminating over and over and over again. No, I appeal to a higher power, and I'm going to go by what that power says about me. Y'all tried it. I appeal to Caesar. I appeal to my higher power. I appeal to the higher authority. He said this to the governor. Well, the governor is subject to Caesar as well. And what would happen if the governor defied the order of the kingdom that he represented or that he operated within? If a governor or magistrate or whomever went against Caesar, they would likely die. They, if a leader doesn't like what's happening, they will just have you put to death. Back in Jesus's story of his birth, which we talked about over the Christmas time in December, we had a series, and the king or whomever at that time, like my brain's not working, so I can't think of anybody's names. Just go read the book of Matthew and the book of Luke. But this ruler who was trying to have Jesus killed was so crazy, he had some of his own children killed because they were coming against him. So Festus wasn't about to just go against Caesar. And his response was, he conferred with council and was like, yeah, this is what we got to do. He said, to Caesar you have appealed, to Caesar you shall go. And so when we appeal to the actual authority, to the higher power, higher than what the devil says about us, higher than what people say about us, higher than what society says about us, because society is trying to fit us all into a box, trying to make us live and act a certain way. And if we don't fit into what society says we ought to do, then there's something wrong with us. There is a city, I don't remember what city, but I read that there is a city that has, because all the landlords have conspired together with city officials, made it illegal for people who are not related to each other to live together, i.e., you cannot have a roommate. So folks, each individual has to pay their own rent. Landlords want all their units filled. That's not, they want us, and yeah, I said they want us to live a certain way. So when multiple people live in a home together, it's looked at as weird. When people come from other countries and they got like 6 cars parked out front and it's 3-4 generations living in the same house, by American standards, we talk about those people, something wrong with them. But guess what? But everybody rent low. But everybody gets to know each other. I bet stories get passed on in their families because there are multiple generations living under the same roof. I bet folks don't have student loan debt when they leave up out of there because they lived there until they get a good job and have money saved up for a down payment on a house or a house altogether. So things that our society tells us that we're supposed to do don't even really make good sense for us. And so folks will call us crazy for being witnesses. Folks will bring accusations against us for being witnesses. Now, in the spirit of what 50 Cent's character said, whatever, sometimes the stuff that they said we did that. But when we keep a clear conscience with God and we keep a clear conscience with mankind, with humankind, with people, and our conscience is clear because we ain't done nothing wrong. We haven't violated anybody. Let them talk. I appeal to a higher power. I will not answer to y'all. If you had something to say, I'd answer to it, but y'all don't have anything to say, and you have no authority here. That's what Paul basically said. Y'all have no authority here. So when the devil tries it, when people try it, we need to remember whose authority we are actually under. We are citizens of the kingdom. Paul was a citizen of Rome. We are citizens of the kingdom of heaven. And as citizens of the kingdom of heaven, we have certain inalienable rights. Ain't got nothing to do with what continent or country we live in, nobody's racist constitution or nothing like that. I am a citizen of heaven and I know my rights. And there's nothing, no charges that you can bring against me here that will stick. And because even if I did it, even if there is a debt that is owed, according to the law and the rules of the kingdom that I am a citizen of, my debt's been paid. Y'all tried it. So that's what I take from this. No matter what is going on in our world, our society, our government's acting crazy, neighbors acting crazy, the state that I live in, the whole state's acting crazy, like make you want to just pack up and leave overnight. They not the authority. Yeah, Jesus said, render to Caesar, pay your taxes. Do the stuff you're supposed to do. Pay the tolls on the road that's already paid for. Like, do the stuff you're supposed to do. Don't go stealing or nothing. But our lives as witnesses are not governed by the rules dictated by our society. Because no matter what earthly kingdom or nation we have residency or citizenship of, we are citizens of the kingdom. And as such, we appeal to Caesar, our king.